and read about you, I was like, psychosexual therapist, we should be teaching people how to, get in there and stuff like that. What does that mean? What does
So, okay, so what it is that so when I took my diploma in psychosexual therapy, the whole idea is to approach sexual issues from the mind.
Okay.
Sometimes, yes, once it's a physical thing, so the manifestation is physical, it usually starts from a mindset, something blocking it. So it could be, for instance, if there's a case of where you have someone who doesn't feel, is not able to just reach an orgasm. It doesn't necessarily mean that they can't. It might be something going on mentally about what's preventing them from being present, from connecting and releasing themselves in order to reach that point. So that's why the psychosexual is about dealing with the mind to enable couples, individuals, to have a better sex life.
Oh, that's very interesting. Now, one would be wondering, what inspired you to want to go into that area of profession?
Oh, now that's an interesting question, because actually my background is I am actually a qualified business analyst and I've worked in the finance industry for ages. But what happened is I went through a divorce. And when I went through a divorce, I was kind of like, I wanted to know what went wrong, to understand what were the issues that was in front of me that I didn't recognize or know how to resolve. And also I wanted to make sure that if I went into another relationship, that I had healed from the previous hurts of the marriage that broke down. So I went to see a life coach. And during the time of seeing that life coach, my eyes were open to things that I wasn't aware of, the things that I had taken for granted in the relationship, the things that he had taken for granted in relationship, the fact that we had started to operate as parents, bill payers, but we weren't operating as lovers, husband and wife, even boyfriend and girlfriend, that kind of stuff. So I was like, when my eyes opened to that, and there were issues regarding sex as well, because I wasn't able to express myself, because as you can imagine, in our background, if you talk about sex, if you like sex too much, you are tagged a certain name.
I was gonna go there.
That's how it is. So it was a case of, okay, so that means that when I was frustrated sexually or frustrated, it might have been a case that we were not connecting emotionally, physically, because I was not able to express myself. He didn't know what I wanted. He wasn't able to express himself. So these were little things that were causing a gap in the relationship, a disconnect. So because of that disconnect, it got to a point, with other things included, don't get me wrong, it got to a point where the marriage disintegrated. So I was like, hang on a second, I'm all about self-development and I'm into personal development. And I was like, if this happened to me and I am in the UK with a Nigerian background, how many other people is it happening to, but they're not able to to get to meet someone who understands where they're coming from to assist them. So like my life coach was white. So when I said something like, oh, when I come back from work, I have to make his dinner and serve it, she didn't understand what I was talking about. So I spent half of my time trying to explain my culture, my religious background, in order for her to gain an understanding to help me. So it's like, actually, if I serve my people where I understand where they're coming from, understand where their partners are coming from, it makes it easier to help them navigate this tricky road of sexual incompatibility, feeling ashamed about your sexual desires, intimacy not being prevalent, because sometimes we marry who is available as opposed to who is desirable. We marry because we want to have kids, or our parents are telling us that we need to get into a relationship because we're getting older, or is the next thing to do, or so there's so many things culturally and in our religion as Black people or those from ethnic minority that kind of destabilizes our relationship. And that was the reason why I said, this is what I want to do. I can talk about sex, I can talk about relationships for England. I love doing it. So I was like, you know what? If this is maybe I had to go through this tribulation so that I'm in a position that I can help other people. And I was like, you know what? This is my calling. I turned 40. I was like, if this is what I'm called to do, then I'm going to do it. And that's how it started.
Oh dear. In our culture, like you mentioned earlier, in Nigeria especially, the subject of sex is something that is spoken with a whisper. And even most times women don't even when you're having an affair with your, you have your boyfriend, you are having sex and all that, it's hard for women to talk about sex or to tell people that they've had sex. So it's like a secret, open
Exactly.
secret out there. So why, now that you're in this coaching people or talking about it openly, trying to get people to start discussing this, how are people, especially in our culture, your circle, how are they receiving your message?
Well, when I first started, it was a bit of a, what's the word? It was a bit of a shock because one, my background of being in finance, being in IT, and also the fact, as you said, we don't talk about sex. So how can somebody come out and say they want to be a sex coach? Of all the things in the world to do, you want to specialize in talking about sex. So it made people have a presumption about me. Someone actually called me a sex worker, and I was like, how am I a sex worker? That's not what I am. But even if you think of me like that, if I'm helping someone. So there was a lot of people that didn't understand what it meant to be a sex coach, because as you alluded to in the beginning, you were wondering, am I going to help people position themselves when they're having sex? Now, there are people that do that, don't get me wrong. But the thing about it is that whilst people might ask me questions in regards to like erectile dysfunction, not having an orgasm, can I squirt, all those things, the reality is that most of the time, it's the underlying effect of the relationship itself, the intimacy, that is even preventing people from having the conversation to speak about what's going right, what's going wrong, what can we improve, what do I want to try, what don't I want to try, because the intimacy, the foundation is not right. Because as you can imagine, as Africans, we are taught that you go to school, you create wealth, you create a legacy. Yes, you maintain your home, but they talk about all the other things apart from the emotional and physical intimacy that keeps the relationship going. And it doesn't even matter if you're dating. So it was kind of then sending that message out to say, it's not all about sex, but sex is important. It's not all about communication, but communication is important. It's about taking intimacy in its entirety for what it means for you and working on it, because communication has to be effective. Just talking is not the key to the relationship, because you and I can be talking, but what you're receiving from me is different from what I'm trying to get to you. So it's about effective communication. It's about learning how to find the fun in your relationship. It's not about being serious all the time. It's about being collaborative. It's not about competition. So all those things is the message that I'm trying to get out, to educate people to understand that, get the foundation right. All those things that you're talking about, oh, she's always upset, he's always out, will start to work itself, because those things will heal, because the wound underneath is being treated.
Oh, so now you can see that almost everything around what you're doing has to do with, first of all, educating people and probably helping them to unlearn some of the things. And that brings me straight to, at the moment, there's this paternity issue that just exploded in Nigeria, where in fact, Nigeria is ranking number 2 in the world with paternity fraud around the world. And it makes me, I began to think, I said, how can that be when most Nigerian women are the most religious, most cultural, most reserved women that you can see, you can't even see the body. Once you show a little part of your body, people will start screaming and stuff. So how is this happening?
To be honest with you, that's a question I asked myself. But what I believe has happened is, if you think about it, let's talk about Nigeria, for instance. In Nigeria, you are given utmost respect when you are a Mrs. The respect you get is second to none. You can be the worst person on this, but because you have an oga, you're a Mrs., you're a madam, the respect is given. Now imagine the second thing, but think about the highest disrespect a woman gets is a woman who has no child. That's the highest disrespect a woman gets. If you are not giving them a child, then giving them a boy. But let's even just talk with child. The disrespect you get from your house girl to possibly your mother-in-law, your brother-in-law is on a level that cannot be quantified for the person receiving that grief. If you don't want to receive that grief and you are the one going to be blamed, despite everybody's education, you are the one going to be blamed for the lack of children in a relationship, because nobody thinks that men can be impotent, what do you think most women are going to do? And I'm not saying anyone listening, I'm not advocating the right of it. What I'm saying is, let's look at it in the cold light of day. The reality is that any family that have no children, they blame the woman, they don't blame the man. Men are, as far as they're concerned, men are the most virile things on the face of the planet. But the reality, it's not true. Men are not the most virile. Men don't always take care of themselves, and men don't want to go for testing because it attacks not only does it attack their manhood, it attacks who they are as a man.
Their ego.
Exactly. So they don't even want to hear it. Then if you now tell a mother-in-law that it could be your son, you are telling her that she produced a son that cannot produce a child. There's not really anywhere for her to go. So to cover her husband's shame, because I'll call it in that way, not because at the end it's not his fault, but to cover the husband's shame and to protect herself from that vile words that will be coming, he may go and do that. It's not right because you're deceiving, but it is what it is.
Yeah.
And until we change our mindset to understand that infertility is not one person's fault, it's not the woman's fault, it can be the man, it can be both, it could be whatever. But if you don't go through that journey, and not everyone is going to be blessed with a child.
Now, I don't know if you went through the Oloni's thread on Twitter. In fact, quite for some time now, she's been doing different kinds of thread, how how you met your husband, or how how your husband proposed, all those kind of stuff. There was one she did where when did you notice that your partner or husband didn't really love you? And then the latest one now that is exploding, in line of this now, and where she's asking women to say what, when they give excuses, like your partner is calling you on the phone, you're giving excuses and all that. So, and a lot of men are really, really shocked that women do those kind of things. So don't you think that this same mindset and culture thing that you're talking about, so most women are pretending, isn't it? Are pretending not to want, therefore they're not getting the satisfactions that they want. Therefore they might be going out looking for that satisfaction. Is that the case?
The thing about it is that, the thing about Nigeria is a very unique place. Yeah. So if we divide the people, so you're talking about, if you take the 40 plus, or maybe, no, sure, let me go for 40 plus, the mindset about sex is very different. The younger people, their mindset about sex is more open. Although I have clients who are in their early 30s, late 20s, who have surprised me with the issue that they come to me about, are issues that I thought I would be dealing with my customers in their 40s. But what I've come to realize is that, one, to be married is good. Two, money is another thing. So you're compromising in the relationship. So they're, okay, you know what? You're fitting the other bills that I have for myself, which is you're tall, you're handsome, you're rich, you're taking care of me. But sexually, you're not, so therefore I'm going to find it outside. And if I'm good enough to cover it, then that's fine. I'm not going to feel guilty because, and I always say this, I said, the times when men were just cheating for physical pleasure is diminishing. Men are actually, I believe, and anybody can quote me anyway, I believe that men are now cheating for an emotional connection and women are cheating for the physical connection. I think that it's changed. Before you would say, oh, women cannot cheat, but if she cheats, that means she doesn't love you anymore. I think women are bucking the trend and now going for the physical connection. They're demanding more sexually. And unfortunately, because we are bringing up men who don't fully understand that sexual pleasure is a two-way street, it's not just about them. Women are saying, I want more. And if you're not going to give it to me, I'm going somewhere else. And as I said, I don't stand in judgment about this. Some people do, but I don't, because sexual pleasure is owned by the person that is wanting it. So I don't stand in, that's not what I do. But women are definitely desiring more. And sometimes men can't live up to it because they don't even know how, but they don't want to seek help.
Yeah.
They don't want to come and say to someone like me, okay, my wife is complaining or my girlfriend's complaining. What can I do? How can I connect to her? How can I understand what she desires? They would rather talk with the boys who say, forget it, and just give her whatever. If you come, no big deal. But then forgetting that women are now seeking their pleasure. And if they're not seeking their pleasure from battery operated, they might fall with another man who's going to give them that pleasure.
Yeah. Now that reminds me of like when I was in school, there was this, one of my classmates that time, she was dating somebody and this guy didn't have any idea what to do, and each time she tries to open up and tell the guy, she was frustrated. That was why she's one of these girls that are like bubbly and chatty and everything. So she was like, anytime I want to tell this guy what to do, he started looking at me as a prostitute. The Nigerian society where every woman, once you talk about sex, then you become a prostitute. So the man, sees her as werewolf, prostitute, and all of that. So, and she was so frustrated. And I know that many women, or I believe, not that I know, I believe many women might be in that shoe. And sometimes because of this same cultural thing and spiritual, religious things and stuff like that, they might have to just bottle it in until at one point they can't cope anymore. If a woman is in this situation, whether you're just dating or as a married woman, how would you handle such situation?
So what I always say to women who feel that they can't express themselves is to ask yourself, why do you feel you can't express yourself? What is stopping you? How are you feeling? Are you going to feel guilty, ashamed because you have your natural desires? Because it has to start with you first. Because as Eleanor Roosevelt said, no one can make you feel bad unless you allow them to. Yeah. So you have to decide, is this important enough for me to have a conversation with my man about?
Yeah.
Because if you don't tell him, he's not going to know. He's just going to think that he's the don and he's doing it well. Because he's going to reach a climax anyway. So you have to decide with yourself, is this important? If it's important to you, no guilt, no shame, he cannot make me feel bad because it's my right. It's my right as a woman to experience pleasure. It's my right to guide you on how my body works, excuse me, because my body is different from somebody else's. Once you get comfortable with that, you know your mind, you know the best way to communicate with him. Everybody is different. So you go to him and say, babe, can we have a conversation? Can we talk? This is what's happening. Get a drink, get him in the mood where he doesn't feel like he's being attacked, because men have egos and, they desire to please their women in whatever way they can. They like to provide solutions to problems. So when you're telling them they're not doing something good, sometimes they can take it as an attack on them personally. So you know how that he's relaxed, he's chilled, and you say, let's try this. How do you think about this? What do you think? Maybe let's try something else. Let me show you how I like it.
Yeah.
Because I know that you're good, but if I enjoy it, it's going to be good for you. You sell it in a way that makes it beneficial for him. So he doesn't feel like you're telling him off and he's inadequate, but you're telling him how his own pleasure can be increased because your desires are being met. That means you're more excited. So you're more engaging and he reaps the benefit. That's what I would say.
Yeah. Don't you think that the burden of making a relationship work, especially, I don't want to say African because I'm not very familiar with other African cultures, but in Nigeria in particular, the burden of making a relationship work is usually on the shoulders of women in so many different ways. How do you advise both the husband, the partners, the male, the female, how do you try to get their minds at the same page?
It's difficult because you have to unlearn something. Because you remember, if you're coming from a religious background, Proverbs 31, woman, virtuous woman, and I always say to people, I say, look, I don't have a problem with you referring to yourself as a Proverbs 31 woman, but you also have to read that chapter in its entirety. When she was in the field and he was at the gate, she had servants. She was not doing it. She was managing a whole household. She was a manager of people. So when you're expecting your wife or your woman or your girlfriend to do everything herself, that's unfair.
Yeah.
That's slavery. How are you showing her love? How are you supporting her? So I would say that as a woman, you also have to stop trying to be superwoman.
Exactly.
You have to admit where you are not coping, your limitations, the things you cannot do. He did not marry you to be a cook. It's not your job description. If that's it, go and hire a cook. No, but it's true.
Yeah, even there was this discussion going on Twitter recently. I think Yeah, and I think it was Reno Okri. You know, he said something like in the lines of Nigerian men, you know, it is your responsibility to cook, to bath your children, to clean the house, and to serve everybody in your house. It's not your wife's responsibility. And Nigerian men were attacking him. And I think on the comment section, one person, there was just one man that said to them, you know, because everybody we are quoting the Bible. I'm trying to anchor what you just said, you know. So everybody, we are all quoting the Bible, virtuous women, all of those kind of, man is the head and stuff like that. And one guy just came in quietly and said, and he wrote there something in that, I'm paraphrasing now. He said something in the line of, if you read your Bible very well, you will find that that same Genesis or whatever you're quoting, what it says there is that the woman is your helpmate. She's here to help you. Therefore, the responsibility is on you, the husband. She's only here to help, and she can only help where she wants to help and where she's able to help. So why now change the responsibility on the head of the woman? So, you know, like what you're saying is really necessary that we continue to push this message so that both male and female, we can understand the positions and not over-label the woman.
And exactly. And the thing about it is also, but I have to admit, and I'm going to say something, and we women, we're worse at it. We're actually worse than the men. We are the ones that will say, but it's a woman's job. And you're like, says who? A woman can take care of her man. Every woman wants to take care of her man. You know, it's what we want to do. It's how it's, but the same way that we take care of our children. But do we stop our children from helping in the house? No, we don't. Not unless we want to spoil them. So our men have responsibilities too. They should help us. I am a firm believer. I would say, before I used to be that woman that would do everything. Don't worry, I will do it. Don't worry. Now, I'm tired. I can't do it. Can you help me? Please help me. You know, because give them the opportunity. Yes, there are men that are lazy and there are men that, but you also have to give them the allowance. And don't go and take over just because they didn't do it properly. They're not always going to do it the way you can, but allow them to do it the way that they can, and they will learn. So, but women, we need to give them space to step into that role. But ultimately, the fact remains that because church will tell you, is because and you know how it is, we all like to pick and choose the Bible passages that suit us for those who are Christians. So they say it's a woman that keeps the household. You know, you're like, we know that, but you know, there has to be a household in the first place to keep. You know, so we need to start to use our common sense as well, and not just take everything as just verbatim and just live it, and then we're dying and suffering in bondage. And you're not happy and you're frustrated and you're shouting at everybody. What's the point? And that is where men have to also kind of seek assistance, say, I don't understand what's going on with my wife. Where do I go to understand? Who can help me interpret what my wife is saying that I'm not hearing? And that's where that communication, and that's where people like me come into play, where you're like, what's going on? Let's talk. Let me help you understand what she's saying. Let me help you understand what he's saying, so that you can live in harmony and your connection is deepened till you get to the point where you don't need me anymore and you can understand each other perfectly.
Exactly. And now the elephant in the room, orgasm. You know, oftentimes, sometimes men struggle to get a woman to orgasm, to reach orgasm. And sometimes, most times, women, you know, tend to pretend that, you know, they've reached their orgasm and stuff like that. So there's always this confusion there. And I read something you wrote on Facebook. You wrote something you said, we put so much pressure on ourselves as women and on our partners during sex for an orgasm. So is it, you know, what's your view about a woman reaching orgasm? Is it necessary? Is it only when you get, is that the only thing that shows that you're satisfied?
Now, the thing about it is that an orgasm is an amazing experience. It's an amazing feeling. It's a stress reliever. It's so many things. But the thing about it is that we sometimes make it as though it's the goal of physical intimacy. And I like to change that mindset, because the act of making love, having sex, whatever you want to use, is equally as pleasurable. You're not always going to have an orgasm. Sometimes it doesn't happen. But that does not diminish the connection, the intimacy, the closeness, the kissing, the everything that happened whilst you were making love. Why diminish it just because one time you didn't have an orgasm? If it's continuous, then that's a different story. But to say that, oh my God, that that what we did was just not anything, just because I didn't have a mind-blowing orgasm, is completely unfair. And another thing is, it's not a man's job to get you to an orgasm on his own, no? Because to be fair, if a man does everything right, but you're busy thinking about junior school fees, nothing he can do will get you to an orgasm. It's not possible because you're not there.
Do women know this? Do we know that we can control our satisfaction from our mind? Do people know this?
Well, then they need to be checking out Duchess's stuff. Then they will know. But the truth of the matter is that I always say that the brain is the biggest sex organ. It is, because everything happens there. If you're busy thinking about what is going to be cooked tomorrow, you're not present in. So no matter what he's doing, you're not engaging with the feelings that are being generated. You're not engaging with the sensation. So how can you then be present in order to let yourself go to experience an orgasm? It's not going to happen, man. No matter how skilled he is, he, can be the most skilled person, but if you're not present, it's not going to happen.
I was reading something, sometime, an article or something. A lady was writing, and she was like, all the time when she in her relationship and stuff like that, she wasn't really enjoying sex because she wasn't relaxed. But as time went on, she began to relax, to enjoy the sex, but she noticed that adding weight. Has that got anything to do with adding weight? Do you have any idea?
That one, she was just happy and she was just eating more. That literally, because think about it, yeah. When you're stressed, yeah, when you're stressed, there's a lot of things you're not eating, all your mind is everywhere. But if you have an orgasm, whether you use the battery-operated boyfriend, like I like to call it, or you use a human being, or you use a shower head, whatever you use.
Battery-operated boyfriend. Oh, I love that one.
Whatever you use, the amount of tension that leaves your body, there's no part two. There's nothing like it. It's a great stress reliever. So she became relaxed. She was enjoying herself. She was probably now doing things that she was even unconsciously doing, which may be eating more indulgent things. She's not necessarily that she's eating more. So if she was treating herself to an ice cream or she's treating herself to another biscuit, these are the things. But an orgasm cannot unnecessarily put on weight for you now. It don't make sense. It's just other things that she was doing because she's now more relaxed and freer and just like, life is good kind of thing. Just makes you indulge more in other good things. Because it's a good thing. Do you see what I'm trying to say? So it's not a case of, it's a direct correlation. It's just the fact that she was indulging in other things that gave her pleasure.
Okay. Now, oftentimes, like even throughout our discussion and stuff, we are talking, when it comes to sex, it's always like talking about the woman, because everybody knows that at the end of the day, the man is going to ejaculate and that's it. So apart from ejaculation, is there any other way that the woman can help the man to actually enjoy the sex, not just to just ejaculate? And is there any other sensations, any other things that men really enjoy that is,
bizarrely, and I didn't realize this until I was doing my own research and studying, that not every man ejaculates. A man can have an orgasm without actually doing the ejaculation end of it. I didn't know that a few men can. Men also think that an ejaculation is the goal too. But that doesn't mean they don't enjoy the pleasure of a blowjob. They still enjoy it. They enjoy the pleasure of whatever their erogenous zone is, their nipples, their ears, their whatever the case may be. They enjoy the fact of being able to touch the woman and the softness of the woman. All that is all pleasurable. But the problem is that we have been conditioned to believe that the goal and the ultimate sensation is the end. The end. It don't make sense now.
Yeah.
The end is the finish. It doesn't make sense. It's everything in between, the variety of the things that you do whilst you are in that mode of
moment. Yeah,
it's everything about the kissing, the words you hear, as our people say, the ringtone. Everything is what makes it amazing. Because let's be honest, if it is just an orgasm that everybody wants, then technically you can literally go to a prostitute and get it. But it's not the same. It's never the same.
Let me ask you this.
That goes with it.
Do you think that if people are really enjoying sex and intimacy with their spouses and partners, do you think do you think domestic violence and all this violence and fighting and stuff, will it be happening? Will it still be happening?
It's easy to say it wouldn't happen, but it's not. The reason being is because there are other things that come into play with domestic violence and narcissistic behavior, all those things. There's other things in play, which is a mental thing. I truly believe there will be less arguments, which is very different from gaslighting, narcissistic behavior, going to the end of beating and hitting your partner. Those extreme bits, those ones I don't think sex would solve. But you see those small arguments of what's wrong with you? You know, those kind of ones that you know. I think that better sex would always. That's why when you see some videos, you watch when the man goes, "Oh baby, what's wrong?" You see as you find, you know, and then she too starts to melt. It's that need of attention, need of validation, need of physical loving in a way that gives them pleasure. Because remember, if you are loving somebody the way that you think they should be loved, they're going to be frustrated. You need to love them the way that they want to be loved.
Exactly.
So if your partner likes dinner and you're buying them gift, it's not going to work. They're going to be frustrated. So you have to, and I always say that you have to remember, love them the way they want to be loved, not the way you think that they should be loved. Because if you love them the way that you think that they should be loved, you will be frustrated, she will be frustrated because you're not communicating. There's a blockage because it's nice, but it's not nice for them. And it's about, when you're loving, it's about them. It's not about you, it's about them. So you need to do it for them. So that's why when people always talk about love language, people say, love language again. It's not about, love language is different. Me, I love food. It's not in the 5, but I love food. So if I'm upset and you say, okay, let's go and eat, I'm more likely to smile than if you say, oh, let's go to, and let me go and buy you clothes. Clothes is nice, don't get me wrong. Jewelry is nice, all those things are nice.
Individual preferences.
The inside, the inner thing where it's like, this is about me. You thought about it, you realize that actually food is a thing for me. And that's something that we also need to understand. And that's why I always say intimacy is great, because when you have intimacy and it's just not physical, it's about the emotional and also the mental intimacy as well. You get to know your partner, so you know what makes them tick. You know how to love them. If they come in and their face is one somehow, you know exactly that, okay, no, let me leave them alone for a bit and then I'll come back and ask them what's going on. You know that if they're watching football, that they're not going to listen to you then. So don't have that conversation then. That's what intimacy does. Because if they don't listen to you, you're going to be upset. Then you fight them. Then you will have an argument over what? Just timing. And that's why I always say things like communication is great, but effective communication is better. It's greater. That's a more better way to gain intimacy when you communicate effectively. When you know how to understand what's going on, seek clarity. So, you know, and everything I've created in my business is to help people gain that kind of thing, because without it, they're just going to, you're just literally swimming against the tide. And every day waking up wondering, what can I do? I've bought her this, I bought her that. And you're like, actually, she wants a cuddle. She wants a cuddle without you trying to have sex with her. That's what she wants. And you're there spending money everywhere. But actually, what she just wants is for you to hold her and just listen.
And that makes sense, because you know, there's this notion that women are always nagging and all that, and the blame is always on the woman, that she's always nagging. You know, I think most men, you know, don't realize that when their wife is nagging, that means the woman believes you are not hearing her.
Exactly. Yes, completely. And the thing about that, she's saying it, but the truth of the matter is that what she's saying with her words, unfortunately, is not really what she wants to say. But she doesn't know how. She just wants the attention.
Exactly.
And if men can understand that, and that's why I always say, men, this marriage business, you can't do it by yourself. Because when Dr. Gray wrote the book, Men Are From Men, Women Are From Venus, he wasn't lying. The same way that you are driving your car makes noise, you go to mechanic and the mechanic will tell you, okay, this is making noise because of this, this, and this. The same thing with your partner. You are not always going to understand. Sometimes you're going to need assistance, and there's no shame in it, because we don't know it all. I had to go to school and I had to go through a divorce just to be at the stage I'm at now. Trust me, nobody wants to go to that. Nobody wants to get to the stage of divorce. It's expensive, it's costly, emotionally, financially. costly. So why not get the help now to save you all that trauma later?
Finally, you've touched almost everything. But before I go to the final point, sir, there's, these things, sometimes these things are really, people, it comes in passing, people think it's funny, but then deep down, some people are copying some of those, comments and thinking they're, reality. Like there's a notion again that, it's difficult to understand a woman. Is that true? Sometimes you see that they bring out this book that is, nobody can ever finish reading. That's, if you want to understand a woman, then you have to finish reading that book. So, and sometimes when I see some things like that, I look at myself, I say, doesn't mean I'm not a woman, because I just need I don't need much, to be happy. I just need my man to, acknowledge that I'm there, acknowledge my strength, acknowledge my contributions, and see me as somebody like himself, that somebody that there's always this thing that people say men have ego. Do women not have ego? Do women not have their own sense of security and all of those things? So what do you think about, are women difficult to understand?
I don't believe women are difficult. What I think it is that men are trying to solve the upper layer of issues, which is a myriad, instead of actually dealing with the fundamentals, which are very simple. Because think about it, what you have mentioned, if you give your lady attention, she's going to open up to you and she's going to tell you exactly what she wants. But if you are not listening to her because you're doing A, B, C, D, whatever, the attention she wants, because the attention will solve, because when you give her attention, so a woman wants attention from you. She maybe wants you to sit down, watch a movie with her, or she wants you to just go to dinner with her. Because she's so comfortable and confident that if she asks you, she knows you will do. She will go and do it herself. She won't even wait for you. Because she's assured. She has, like David said, assurance. She has assurance that if I ask, it will be given. So there's no point even asking, because I can do it. And if something goes wrong, I just need to say, babe, I need this, what's happened. You will just step in. Yeah. But if you're not giving her attention for that assurance, then of course she's going to be complex, because she's going to complain about everything that is going wrong. But if you drill down to it, and guys, you guys know how to do, if you drill down to it, it's one thing. It's literally 1 to 2 or 3 things that will cover everything. So we should stop dealing with the high level stuff and go to the low level, and you realize that it's not that complicated.
Relationship and intimacy is just that, it's not that difficult, it's not that complex, it's simple. Understand your partner, know what your partner wants, not what you want. I remember in my, when I got married newly, myself and my husband, we used to argue, like, because my husband, every time he says, I love you, but when he's saying I love you, I say, you're saying that in words, I can't see the action. He believes that he loves me, and he believes that he's assuring me of his love all the time. But then when it comes to action, for example, when we had our baby and all that, so I'll be busy. We had two kids, our second daughter. So I'll be busy with one, and the other one is crying. And he's calling me, baby, come and carry this. I have 2 hands the same way you have 2. Why can't you carry that one? That kind of thing. So I'll be like, you see me here struggling, and and you're telling me you love me, but you're not assisting. So that's where I need the action of that love. So most times, men and women, I think we need to change like this. Like when you meet your partner, just switch. Try to read him. He's reading you. So you are trying to please this person. This person is so that you people can come together.
Exactly.
So what you've just been saying here is really very simple as that. And that mind, isn't it? They just have to take that decision.
Is that conditioning of, people say mumu button, and it's like, it's not mumu button. It's a case of, I love you. So I want to do what makes you happy. And in order for me to do what makes you happy, I need to know what makes you feel loved.
Exactly.
And sometimes you have to ask the question. People say, they should just know. Why? The only mind reader is God, though. He's the one who has the ability.
I know. Okay, so, now.
So just tell, ask, tell, communicate, tell each other, so that they know, so they're not guessing and then clutching in the darkness when all they want to do is, just tell me, please. Make my life simple.
Yeah, running this campaign, trying to get parents to talk you know. So I want you to talk about it a little bit. National Parents Don't Be Shy campaign. What is it all about? Who are you targeting? Are people responding? You know, how is it going?
So what it is that, so I have two children. I have an 18-year-old and a 14-year-old. And I have, so based on what I do as an intimacy coach, there's obviously, I'm trying to learn how to be open to have conversations with my children. Now, my daughter, a very precocious young lady, one day I was driving and she asked me a question that said, what is a pansexual? And I've been in the UK for a very long time. So I was battling between being a Nigerian mother and being an English mother. You know, that kind of thing where I was like,
yeah.
I was about to say, who told you that? Well, you know, trying to go, and I was like, no, let me answer the question. So I said, where did you hear that from? And she told me, basically, she goes to a girls' school, and her I think her form room is where they have the meetings for LGBTQ++.
Yeah.
There's a lot of things on the wall. So she asked me that question. I gave her the answer. Then we talked about, then she asked me another question like, oh, if my son asked me for a condom, what would I do? And she asked me this in the middle of Boots, which is a chemist. So I realized that she's always asking me questions, but she's gotten to a point where she's quite comfortable to have that conversation with me. My son, not so much, but he started to ask me questions as well because they know what I do. I don't hide it because there's nothing to be ashamed of. And I was thinking, I was like, oh, wow, if me as a mom, a professional, qualified to speak about these things, still battling between, oh, should I have this conversation? Should I not have that conversation? How many other parents are struggling to have the conversation with their children regarding relationship and sex, knowing what age to start at and what to talk about?
Yeah.
So after I created my products for couples, you know, I said, okay, you know, I created intimacy cards, I created the intimacy coaching guide. I was like, you know what, I want to create something for parents to help them know what are the things that is being discussed during, I mean, because I live in the UK, during the relationship sex education in schools, and give them the opportunity to elaborate on it, get their children to be comfortable to ask them questions, get an understanding of what their child is talking about, and empower their children to make the right decision for themselves. Because I know that parents always are afraid that if they have a conversation about their children, about relationship and sex, and you notice I say relationship and sex, not just sex, because relationship is important too, that they think that they're endorsing them having sex early. I'm like, no, it's about giving them the tools to be able to handle the approaches they will have from the opposite sex, about them understanding consent, about their bodies, about gender, about sexuality, understanding about violence, about understanding those things so that they can come to you and know that if I speak to mom or dad, they're not going to say, what did you do? It's your fault. You should not be talking about that. To give even the parents the ability to say, you know what? I'm going to be comfortable with having this conversation with my child, because the same way I'm teaching them about money, to save money, to make money, to spend wisely, I should also teach them about relationship, about sex, so that when they get into relationship at whatever age they do, because, you know, as much as we want to pray that our children don't do it early, we don't know.
Yeah.
We need to have that conversation with them so that they start to make proper sense. So it's not about, oh, my will must be done. No, it's about the child knowing what is right for them and making the right decision. So that is the reason why. So at the moment, I'm in the process of creating a course, and it's all about the parents don't be shy. So I'm creating a course, an online course, to help parents to have that conversation, as well as offering one-to-one coaching. I do one-to-one coaching at the moment for it, but I also wanted to provide something digital for parents as well, so at their own time, because I think that a lot of dysfunctional relationships that are happening in people my age stemmed from the fact that sex education wasn't talked about. My mother told me, if you start your period, a boy touches you, you get pregnant. That was it. That's my sex education. But we know that's not true. We know that most of the men in their 40s, 50s now lost their virginity to their aunties and house girls. That's dysfunctional.
Yeah.
But nobody taught them that actually they shouldn't take advantage of your body at that time. So we need to be taking control of this narrative for our children. And that's
created
this.
That reminds me, like when I was in secondary school, way before I even entered secondary school, my mom is a teacher, or she's retired now. So she began very early. I'm the first daughter, so she began very early to start talking to me about sex. So I had a grounded understanding of sex way before I even entered secondary school. So when we started doing biology and stuff, and we were doing menstruation, and I was answering questions, my classmates were like, "This girl, have you started having sex?" And those kind of things. And I wasn't. So I was like, I don't know what people are talking about. These are what my mom taught me, and I know these things. Sometimes when I read about parents, experiences that parents have with their children being abused, sometimes these things come from ignorance. Even when the child doesn't know, the child is timid, it's easy for anybody to convince them and then abuse them. But when they know, that this is wrong and this is not right, and this is what you're trying to do to me, then they own their voice will be strong, and they'll be confident in themselves, and they will tell the person, "I'm telling," because most sexual abuses happen in the family, from familiar people. It's not strangers. The strangers one are usually the accidental ones, and so but the main ones happen in the environment that you're familiar with. So anchoring what you just said as we are concluding now is, I will also be telling parents, I'm telling parents now, is good for you to educate your children as early as possible.
Yes, I agree.
Once they start school, even for me, I start talking to them about, so they know that when somebody is approaching them in a certain way, they need to be worried, and they should tell you. So I think we'll have another time there are you have a lot to say, and I'm loving it. So thank you so much, Iphie. And it's been, a valuable session, and I hope that people are going to take advantage of this free content and, change their lives. And of course, if they need more, where can they find you, and how can they connect with you?
Okay, so I'm on Instagram as Duchess Iphie. So, and it's Iphie, Iphie, and I'm on Facebook, Duchess Iphie. My business page is Duchess Secrets, which is the name of my business, is Duchess Secrets. You can get me, my website is www.duchessiphie, and I have another one, duchessiphie.info or .com. Either one you can get me on. Where else can they get me? I am on Twitter.
I love that.
I am on Twitter. It's not really that much, but I am on Twitter as well. And if you want to send me an email, it's info@duchesssecrets.com.
Okay.
So you can get me there. And if you want any of my products, if you go to Instagram, if you go in the bio, you can see everything I sell. I have intimacy cards for conversations, to help have the conversations with your partner that you wouldn't normally have. If you want coaching, but you can't really afford to have one-to-one coaching, I have a digital coaching guide, which you can get downloaded. It's got free workbooks and the audio guide as well, to kind of help you get clarity, confidence, and ability to communicate effectively. That is there as well. If you want one-to-one, I'm also there. So yeah, so I'm pretty, if you Google Duchess Iphie, I will come up. That's the truth.
Yeah, I noticed that. So thank you so much. Iphie, I'll be running now because I have another interview.
No worries. Thank you so much.
So thank you so much. Yeah, let me know.